PK in the universe, and I am back again with another video. And today I'm here to talk about my first home console. This is actually a response video to the Atari Creep. The Atari Creep made a video like 2 years ago. It was in response to Mr. Poe Style, I want to say. I think some other people had made response videos like Brian's Man Cave and Arcade USA. I believe they also made some videos talking about, their very first home console. What was your first home console? Definitely tell me in the comments section, and I'll ask that again at the end. But anyways, I want to talk about my very first home console today for this particular video. And today we're here to discuss the NES. That's right, the original NES. I had one, I believe it was the action set. I'm pretty sure it was the action set with the orange light gun and 2 controllers. And of course, Mario Duck Hunt. I got this for Christmas, and it was a really big deal to me. Now, this wasn't my first time playing the NES, though. My neighbor across the street also had an NES, and it was a really big deal for me because I used to love to play the original Super Mario Brothers, and of course, I used to play Super Mario Brothers 2 and Super Mario Brothers 3. I particularly have a great fondness for Super Mario Bros. 2. There's just something about this game. Yes, Super Mario Bros. 3 is a superior game in just pretty much every way, but I don't know what it is about this game. I just love that single-player experience. I'm an only child, so, I like the idea of playing as all these different characters, and they all had different abilities and skills. It was very different from the first one, and of course the third one is a return to form, of course, because, everybody in there, Doki Doki Panic, yeah, I know, I'm very aware of that, I wasn't born yesterday. But, in fact, it was actually in a Nintendo magazine many, many years ago, so people act like it's some big revelation, but it's not. It's not at all. I don't know what it is, but for some reason this is still my favorite one out of the entire original trilogy. I love the music. The music's good in Mario 3 too. Again, objectively, Mario 3 is a better game. It just has so much more content in it, but this is so unique. It's such a unique entry in the Mario series, and I love it to death. So the funny thing too is my neighbor also happened to be my babysitter, actually, and her kids were a little older than me. And her kids were quite a bit older than me. But they, all worked and stuff, and would come home and hang out with me, and we'd all play games together. And my neighbor, she actually gave this to me, not this particular exact copy, but gave me their copy of Super Mario Bros. 2. And I remember one of the kids was mad about that, and looking back, I'm like, yeah, I kind of understand why, their mom giving games away to a kid, But I was like 6 years old, so I kind of understand, But man, I can't say enough about this. It's one of those games I first had. So yeah, I had the original Mario trilogy and, Duck Hunt. I love playing Duck Hunt. It's a game I still pop into the original NES and grab my Duck Hunt gun. Sometimes I play this game with my son and he really enjoys that. Another thing I do have a lot of fond memories of course, is of renting video games like Zelda 2. I remember renting that. Snake Rattle and Roll. What else did I rent? Skate or Die, I remember renting that, and Cobra Triangle, that's another game I have a lot of fond memories renting. These are games I own now too, actually. And one of the fondest memories of games I remember renting was Batman. Batman on the NES really was something else. It was so cool to be 5-6 years old and playing as Batman. I had watched the Michael Keaton original Batman on VHS back in the day. I have so many fond memories of watching that over and over again on VHS, and then to actually get to play the game, there was actually a Batman game. That's just crazy to think about, at the time. It was a big deal to a kid my age at the time, and it was really something else. Another game I have a lot of fond memories of is Al Unser Jr. Turbo Racing. As you guys know, I'm a big racing game fan, and this was one of my first experience playing any racing game on a home console. How I got it was a pretty interesting story too. So my dad had this woman who worked for him, and she invited us all to go see their farm. And we met her and her husband, and she had some kids too. And their one older son or whatever had a bunch of NES games. I swear, this guy had probably like 30, 35 NES games. It was crazy. I was like, you guys must be rich. This is incredible. And one of those games was Al Unser Jr. Turbo Racing. And I remember trying it out, and I liked it a lot. And the guy was like, hey, you can borrow this if you want. And I'm like, sure. So I went to go return it to him eventually, and he was like, "Just keep it. I don't really care." I think he'd gotten an SNES or a Sega Genesis, so I don't think he cared anymore about NES games, but it was really cool that I got this. I was like, so this is how I got Al Unser Jr. Turbo Racing. Now, this game isn't expensive or, renowned in the NES library, but I still really have a lot of nostalgia for it, and it's a game I really appreciate. It's still not my favorite racing game of all the old school racing games, but it still holds a special place in my heart. So, up next is my favorite NES game of all time. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. Sure, it's not like the original arcade, as in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade that you could actually go play in an actual arcade back in the day. And the downside, of course, is you can only play as 2 players on this game, but the other trade-off is there's 2 additional levels, which was pretty darn cool. I really enjoy the heck out of this game. It's one of those games I play at least once a year. I'm really glad it's on the Cowabunga collection now. That's fantastic. But, this is something else here, and obviously it still has the Pizza Hut logos in, unlike the Cowabunga collection. So this is one of those few games I actually have a boxed copy of, and it's a game that means just a lot to me personally. I have so many fond memories of playing this game for hours. I remember, fighting the Shredder at the end, and man, the Shredder is so hard, and of course when he duplicates himself and everything like that, it's crazy. This is one of those games that just means a lot to me. Like, if my house was on fire and I could only grab one game, I'd probably grab this game, honestly. It's just has so much sentimental value to me, That's that game there. And finally, this is the last NES game I ever got. And I got this for my birthday. And that's Battletoads and Double Dragon. This is not the original copy, of course. I rebought it later on. But I understand there's an SNES version, and of course there's the Sega Genesis version, and graphically speaking, obviously they are superior. But I particularly still love this version. It's my favorite version because it's the version I grew up playing. And, it's just such a crazy, outlandish game. It's like this, like you start out the game, and of course at the beginning of the game you can choose between all 3 Battletoads, Rash, Pimple, and Zitz, or you can play as Billy and Jimmy Lee of Double Dragon. And it's really strange because, you start out the game and you're like fighting on top of spaceships and you don't have like a space helmet or anything. It's just very bizarre. But this was my first Double Dragon game of any kind. Like, I had rented the original Double Dragon, had a hard time playing Double Dragon 2. I just could not get used to the controls. But this game, it just feels right. It's definitely a Battletoads game, that happens to have Double Dragon characters. That's my opinion of it, of course. I believe there's they did a reprint of these, I think it was like Retrobit or somebody. Yeah, did like some new version of it. I thought about getting it, strongly considered it, but then I'm like, I have the original version. Why would I need that? I have the real thing, it's not some reproduction cartridge. Like, from a nostalgia perspective, I totally understand wanting to get that, but at the same time, I was like, I have this, so I don't really need that. So, more power to anybody who did get that, though. That thing, it looks really cool, honestly. It looks awesome. So that's just a couple of NES games that I had in my very first home console, which was the NES. I wish I could say this was my original, but it is not. This is one I actually bought at a flea market with a woman who was my girlfriend, but is my wife now, actually. And this was one of our first dates, was me getting this NES. And I got an SNES and a Genesis as well, like all in the same day. It was crazy. Yes, I actually, on my first date, I took my wife to a flea market. That's pretty crazy. And she loved it because there's certain things she likes too. You don't have to have the same interests as your, girlfriend or wife, okay? It's good to actually have different hobbies, believe it or not. And not that there's anything wrong with sharing hobbies. Nothing wrong with that at all. And as you guys can see in the background, I have the NES Classic, of course. It's kind of hard to see. And I got that with my son in mind before he was even born. I was like, I knew I was going to have a son, so I was like, I'd really have him, play these games on a modern TV, on a modern system. Because as much as I love the NES, this thing is archaic. This is the biggest frickin' flaw. This darn thing, I love the NES. It's a system that means the world to me. It's my first video game console, or video game home console anyways. But the one big fatal flaw of the NES is the darn 72-pin connector not connecting over time. And there's been solutions like the blinking light win was one of them. I actually bought one, and believe it or not, my blinking light win NES that I put the pin connector in doesn't work anymore. Yeah. So, and a lot of people, of course, obviously use top loaders. There's the top loaded NES. When people play through emulation, obviously, which is what the NES Classic is, or people play like on Retrons and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But, yeah, so I love the NES, but I have to admit, it's, you know, that particular thing about it has not aged well. But overall, that still doesn't change how I feel about it. It's a console I absolutely adore and can't get enough of. I can't get enough of those games. There's just so many darn good NES games. And you know what? We live in a really wonderful time when people are still making NES games. There are more homebrew indie NES games in existence right now than there were NES games originally released in its heyday, in its original time. So, anyways, what are your guys' thoughts? What was your first home console? Comment below. Love to hear what you have to say. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and stay awesome in this universe. Thanks. Bye.